sapiens and superior alike. My name is Josephine Riesman.
And my name is Becca Petunia.
We are two trans women here to talk, well, today not exactly about non-binary writer Grant Morrison's Turn of the Millennium comics run with the X-Men, but that will be lingering in the background as we talk about a different X-Men work and definitely talking about what it tells us, the X-Men Legendarium, and this work about finding joy in a world that hates and fears us. In other words,
Here
here
comes
comes tomorrow.
tomorrow.
We're a little
Josie,
out of practice.
Josie, yeah, and I think that's the first time you've said X-Men Legendarium.
Have I? Oh wow, that just flew out of my mouth. I wasn't even thinking about that.
Yeah, I think that might be the first time anyone has ever said X-Men Legendarium.
You have to understand, Becca, when I was at Vulture writing about this stuff regularly, I had to come up with so many different words for shared universe or like mythos. Like all of these, there were so many different synonyms for it after a while. So
Yeah,
Legendarium is just the one that I happen to use here,
the
but
Super Smash Brothers Legendarium. I understand. Fox
shared
McCloud
universe.
was in that movie. Uh,
Yeah. So, Becca, today we have a special guest that we're not going to spend too much time not talking about and with because we want to talk about his amazing work. Basically, today we're going to be talking about something that I don't think most of you even know exists if you are not from the town of Oak Park, Illinois, but you should know about it because it's amazing. And that is there is an X-Men musical. There is an actual full-fledged musical theater production with a book, lyrics, music, everything that can be performed at schools and has been. And we are so honored today to have as our guest Riley Thomas, who is what would you say the preferred term is? Because you did it all. You're the composer, the creator.
Sure.
Sure, great. The
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 the I,
mastermind, the mastermind.
Call me what you will. There you
The
go.
the
mastermind behind X-Men Mad Avenue, which is a fantastic stage musical about the X-Men and about so much more as well. So, Riley, thank you so much for appearing on the show with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a delight to be here.
Yeah, well, I guess to start out, to put our cards on the table, I want to just say the origin of how this came to be on our end, how I even came to stumble across this, because what's weird is now I can't even remember the exact inciting thing, but I was just thinking, well, what can we do in these interstitial episodes? Maybe I was thinking that, but I Googled X-Men the musical, thinking somebody must have done some goofy thing at some point, or I don't know, maybe there's some episode of history I don't know about. And I find this sizzle reel for this wonderful looking high school production. And I'm like, wow, this is really great. And then I see where it's from, Oak Park and River Forest High School, which, dear listeners, you may recall, I've mentioned it a couple of times. That's where I went to high school. I was like, what the heck? And then I find out that it's Riley, who I went to high school with. We overlapped by a couple of years. And we got in touch and it just felt completely meant to be. But what I want to say as my first question is I didn't even know you were an X-Men fan when we knew each other in high school. What were the comics that you grew up with? What were the X-Men comics that really meant a lot to you when you were coming up?
Oh,
Or
that's a
X-Men stories in general?
sure. That's a really good question. I am a fan of all of it. Honestly, it was the animated series that really hooked me. When I was younger and growing up in rural Michigan, I used to like ride my bike to the comic book store, and so I picked up a bunch of comics from there, and I was always drawn towards X-Men. I think just because of the art and the style, and then as you're reading it, you just become you familiar with the legendarium, if you will, and stick to it. So a lot of the Jim Lee, Chris Claremont stuff, obviously, I read and fell in love with, and going forward from there. But I think in high school, it was really just that and the very, very OG Jack Kirby Stanley series too, because I remember getting one of those big, like the entire first run compendium things. So like,
Yeah.
those are the ones that I was focusing on back
Do you
then.
remember what you made? Do you remember what you thought of those original 60s comics? Because they're so different from
They're
what
so
comes
different.
later. Do you remember, were you into them a lot? Like, did they work for you when you were a kid? I tried to read them when I was a kid and was like, this is not the X-Men I'm familiar with, and kind of dropped them until I was an adult.
Yeah, it became an intellectual exercise more than anything, honestly.
Wow.
But I loved it, and I loved seeing the ways they changed their mind when they realized things weren't working. Was really interesting to me.
Ah,
And what they kept, and the things that they hit right out of the gate in the beginning, like the very first episode, setting up the main conflict between, the X-Men fighting for you know, to protect a world that hates them versus the ideology of Magneto being like, no, we deserve a better, stronger place. Like that was just right from the get-go, which I think
right.
is a really strong idea. So the things that were really working versus the things that they're like, oh, this is weird, like Professor X having a crush on Jean Grey. You know what I mean? Things like that. We're like, oh,
It's yeah, yeah, yeah. Mhm.
but I did enjoy it, and mostly because it was mine and I got to read it. You know what I mean? When you're younger,
Oh
especially,
yeah,
like this is mine.
100%. 100%. And did you feel protective about that? I'm curious because, like I said, we never discussed the X-Men, despite the fact that we were in close proximity doing theater. Was it sort of like a personal thing for you? Like you wanted to keep it to kind of your own head?
It was, and especially because when I was younger, I don't think it was anything that I wanted to keep specifically to myself. But when I was younger, I was a little bit more private than I am now, just in
Right,
terms of what I chose to share with people and whatnot. So I don't think I would ever deny it having been asked it or if I was seen reading
right.
it or whatever, but it was not something that I just brought up.
Did you read the Grant Morrison run out of
I did. I
curiosity?
love the Grant Morrison run.
Oh, really? Good,
Yeah,
good, good. Yeah, because that was what was coming out when we were both in high school, as I recall, or probably into after that for you. But let's come back to the Morrison run later. I want to talk about this wonderful show
sure.
and how it came to be. So you and I did theater. We're students. We go off in divergent directions. We have all kinds of Michigan adventures on our own. And what brings us back together is the X-Men today. How did this X-Men musical first have its germ? What was the seedlet that eventually grew into Mad Avenue?
Sure. It was sort of simply me hustling. I am a musical theater writer, among other things, and you're always looking for the next job and the next thing that you can push or the next angle and whatnot. And I remember contacting the head of the drama department at OPRF and just being like, "Hey, do you guys want to commission a new musical?" Just as an excuse to work on something, write something. I liked the idea of going back to my high school and doing a show. And I'd done some commissions at colleges before, and was just sort of looking for any angle. And Michelle DePasquale, who runs the drama department there, was like, "Oh my God, sure, let's do it. What would you like to do?" And so I was just sort of tossing my brain around for like what could be appropriate. Obviously, I wanted to write, a big proscenium style musical, something that could be suitable for a lot of people to do, something that was not necessarily kid friendly, but obviously not, super adult or anything.
Right, right.
And I mean, in the back of my head, I always thought the X-Men would make a good musical, which I know is the scariest thing for any X-Men fan to hear, or frankly, any fan of any fandom to hear, is they think it would make a good musical. So
Why is
believe me,
that
I know.
scary? I think that's
Oh,
wonderful.
I think there is a school of thought that turning something into a musical is a way to dumb it down, is a way to
Oh, okay.
remove any nuance from it, or to make fun of it almost in a sense, or to turn it into like a
Mm,
big jazz hands, tap
sure.
number nightmare. So understand and respect that. But that's not what I do, but we'll get to that, I'm sure.
We'll get to that. Yes, but go on. Yes.
So in the back of my head, I knew I always wanted to, just because these characters are so larger than life and the conflict is so human in spite of it being full of spectacle. And I realized that it would be perfect for schools because you're covered under educational laws and whatnot,
Which I didn't know. I
for
didn't know
IP
that getting
stuff.
covered on that for IP, that was even a thing.
We
There's
get away
some,
with so much at schools,
Is
IP
that really
wise,
true?
that
Both of
we
you can tell me about that because I don't know about that.
it's just like, there's so many things that get allowed for fair use because of education, like in terms of like
Oh,
reproduction and distribution of copyrighted works. Like, again, as an English
interesting.
teacher, like no one bats an eye if I run off photocopies of a short story and give it to all of my children. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
that's just what you do in school. But if you
Sure.
pause and think about it, it's like, well, no, Becca, you're really getting away with something when you do that. Like I couldn't just walk up on a street corner and just say, "Hey everybody, here's a copy of, here's a copy of this Ursula Le Guin short story." Like you can't just do that.
Right.
Right.
It really comes down to the money too. One of the main
Yeah.
tenets of fair use is how you're making money or how much money you're making and where it's going, et cetera. So, there's certain things that you want to make sure you don't cross and you're not pocketing any money, et cetera, like that kind of stuff. And I got a glorified fly under the radar and you'll be fine response from a contact who works at Disney. So
Great.
that's sort of where we landed.
And that's why we're promoting this right now.
That's right. To get you in trouble. Yes.
Perfect. Love it.
This has
Yeah.
been a sting operation, a very long and confusing sting operation, but a sting operation.
Yeah, we're
Perfect.
here. We're here. We're
Um,
queer. But yes, go on. Yes.
well, I mean, that's sort of the long and short of it. I realized that that would be perfect because it would be able to be done. And it's also like a large cast of characters. They're also
Yeah.
distinct. It really lets itself be open to it feels like a slam dunk for schools in terms of educational purpose. First of all of the characters, like I said, larger than life, they're archetypal, they're open to gender and race blind casting because that doesn't really matter, which I think is really strong for a school. There's lots of opportunities for every aspect of production design, whether it's sets, whether it's
Sure.
costumes, lighting, special effects, all of that stuff really lends itself to imagination and training and style and all things that are really good to teach on. There's stage combat, there's dance,
Yeah.
there's all of it. So I was like, ooh, this could be really fun. So that's how it came to be.
It was very apparent when reading it, that the idea of making sure that every character got a decent amount of stage time and every character has a solo, like basically every character has a solo
Pretty
number.
much.
Or at least several verses of solo. Like I don't think Jubilee gets a whole song, but Jubilee gets a whole intro kind of patter. Like it's really it's something that I know because I see on my end, I don't teach drama, but I do, believe it or not, in my role as GSA advisor, I encounter a lot of children who do drama. Believe it or not, um,
Shocking.
you wouldn't
To the
think those
surprise.
you wouldn't think those two spheres would cross over, but they I'm here to tell all of our listeners that they do. And I see how upset that they get when they get a role where it's like I can't believe that I'm like I'm in the ensemble or whatever, and I have to be like, well, there are no small roles in theater. Like, I'm
Right,
I'm I'm
right, right.
sorry, but like, this is how it goes sometimes, and you're gonna do a great job.
But the great thing about Matt Avenue, you don't have that problem. If you're in Matt
That's true.
Avenue, most likely you get a moment to
You
shine, which
barely even have an ensemble at all. It's really just like that you have 20 different characters who each have
and they
like
and they double up, which is great. It's like,
Yeah.
can you give us we don't have to do like a thumbnail of the whole plot of the entire thing. I don't want to give away spoilers, but how would you describe the basic setup if you were trying to pitch this to an X-Men fan? Be like, what's the how did you come up with what the lineup was and the basic setup of what this X-Men story was?
Sure. That's like several questions in one. So give me a
I know, I realized I kind of doubled up some questions. Why don't we start out with,
that's fine.
let's just start out with when you were sitting down and going, okay, so I have an X-Men opportunity here. I can tell an X-Men story. What the hell X-Men story do I tell? I guess that's the question I am getting at. How did you answer the question for yourself of like, who are these X-Men? What is this X-Men story? Did you go back to source texts? How did you find out what your X-Men story was going to be?
Sure, that's an excellent question and really
Yeah.
important because I tossed my brain around and I I thought about possibly adapting, a run that I really liked for the stage, but then quickly realized that that wouldn't necessarily be the best idea or wouldn't necessarily translate well. I think something that
Hmm.
fails very often when you're doing transmedium composition or anything like that, or you're taking IP and putting it someplace where it doesn't or where it wasn't created, you might lose something in the translation, or you're not taking full advantage of the new medium. And
Sure.
so I quickly realized that if you wanted to do one of the like super famous storylines of X-Men, if you wanted to make like a time travel apocalypse storyline or like the Phoenix storyline or whatnot, like you could do that with like Broadway level money and special effects and major sets
Right.
and things. And like, so I quickly realized I didn't want to go that direction. And one of the things that I think musicals do really well is sort of get to the heart of something and get to the emotion of something. And they're
Mm-hmm.
very human. And I was like, oh, okay, I want to keep this like as street level as possible because that's going to be the in for the audience because I'm already asking the audience to watch a superhero musical. I don't want to
Right.
throw, like the Shi'ar at them or any like deep track stuff.
Sentinels are a little expensive to pull off. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Now, I have been working on a song that explains all the backstory of Cassandra Nova, but it'll
Love it.
yeah, wait until my musical where I just
Yeah, yeah,
do go
yeah.
into all of that, and I expect my audience to understand all about opposite ghosts.
I
But
can't
anyway.
wait. I can't wait. I would love to see that.
But wait, but Bradley, back to you. Yeah, how did you do it?
Yeah, so once I realized that, I was like, okay, what's the most human thing I could do? And I landed on the Friends of Humanity, being like an anti-mutant hate group. And I was like, you know what, this is a perfect sort of backdrop for what
Hmm.
I want to do. And so I knew it was going to be some sort of Friends of Humanity story because I think that creates a great dynamic of X-Men, Friends of Humanity, Brotherhood, sort of being of three different ideals. And that
Yeah.
makes for some really interesting conflicts between the three. And then I was like, ooh, since it's going to be a musical, let's sort of center it around the musical character, if you will, that I knew from X-Men. And I was like, let's use Dazzler
Yeah.
and sort of set it to a backdrop of her, pop career. And I was like, great, let's make her like the most famous mutant in the world. And that's when I was like, okay, great. I'm going to sort of have to create my own story here to really make what I want to have happen on stage, which is, like we said, make sure that everyone gets fronted and centered at some point, really design a show that serves the medium as well as introduces people to sort of the main themes and characters and idea of X-Men that we all know and love. So I was like, great, I'm
Yes.
going to come up with my own original story. I'm centering Dazzler because it's a musical. I'm just sort of going to point to the fact that it's musical and we love it and here we go. And that's the genesis of it all, if that makes sense.
One of the things that I really loved, and I know I was talking to Josie about this, in your sort of you have like an author's note at the beginning of the script at the beginning
I
of the
do.
book that mentions that part of why you really liked this story and this choice to use the Friends of Humanity was because it allows for a school to kind of combine this with a lesson about like prejudice in the real world. And I'm curious about that because, as a teacher, I do really believe that we can really teach our students about these sort of real world issues through fiction and through media. But it's been something that's been sort of a runner throughout this season on our podcast that sometimes it feels like the X-Men metaphor, the mutant metaphor doesn't really work. So I'm so curious about your thoughts on that and like whether you feel like the X-Men works as a venue to convey these sort of themes. Um,
Obviously, you think you do, but like, what's the best? How did you approach the mutant metaphor? I guess
thank
is
you,
the,
Josie, for
yeah,
saving my
how because it's
question.
a delicate thing. It's a delicate thing to go. This is a stand-in for real world prejudice when it's people who have magical powers. How did you approach the metaphor and how to address it?
I think that's something that you don't need to approach. I think it's
Hmm.
right there. And so in my brain, what I think makes it so strong is it is so inherently linked, and that it's such a small suspension of disbelief to be like to go from, they're a marginalized class because they have magical powers to people who are marginalized classes. Because at the heart of it, it's all
Right.
just fear and what you're afraid of,
Hmm.
regardless of what the extremity of it is. And I think that's also the point. Something that I think that makes the metaphor land is fear is so often irrational. And if you're afraid of a group of people, like you, your mind is so bent out of shape of what you think those people are going to do to you or be to you. Look at the way that we in America right now are
Hmm.
scapegoating different groups of people because we think they're coming and they're eating the dogs and they're eating the cats and they're raping your
Right,
wives. You
right.
know, like it's so extreme and outlandish. They might as well have magical powers. You know what I mean?
In this fictional world. That's very interesting.
It, it's when you say, how do I approach the metaphor? I don't need to. It approaches me, which is
Huh.
why I'm in it.
Yeah. That's great. I wanna I this is a perfect segue because I wanted to talk about some of the specific songs in the show because we're
Sure,
gonna play some clips from some of them. And the first one is the opening song, Forecast,
sure.
which I find very moving. It's it starts with Storm singing a little bit about air, water, heat, pressure, and then it goes into not just being a weather forecast, but kind of a forecast as a prelude of what's going to come. You have newscasts and people talking.
Air, water, heat, pressure, haze. What are your disparate whisperings? Will it be one of those days?
Today on Action News, the new over-the-counter test for the Mutant X gene continues to cause controversy.
Billionaire Emma Frost has partnered with former Congresswoman Olivia Creed to create the Friends of Humanity. We stand at the dawn of a new day, where we must admit, though they may be a fluke or a blunder, mutants are here to stay. So we have created the Friends of Humanity to fight for the rights of normal people and to ensure our legacy. And now we offer a $10,000 reward to anyone who identifies a mutant. To me, you're my company. We offer this cash reward in hopes the United Nations will understand the necessity of the Mutant Registration Act. All mutants must be registered with the world leaders. This is a matter of public safety. We must secure our future. We must protect the human race. We will not be a footnote in history. We meet this danger face to face.
And one thing that really sticks out in that song is the Friends of Humanity saying the phrase, "We must secure our future."
Sure.
So I'm curious, how did you go about writing Forecast and specifically writing the Friends of Humanity parts, which have to introduce the moral stakes that we're dealing with here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, do you mind if I sort of like read the blurb of the show just to give people a context of like what we're talking about?
Oh, sure. Go ahead. Yeah, read it.
Please.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I
I
pulled it
love
up here.
blurbs.
Just to the log line, if you will. Okay.
Yes.
X-Men Mad Avenue. Amidst a swell of anti-mutant violence and the government poised to take action against mutants, the X-Men turn to Dazzler, former team member and now the world's most famous mutant pop star, to win over the public. But not all mutant kind supports harmony, for Magneto and his followers have concocted a scheme that could start a war. Can the X-Men stand against the tide of hate that threatens to wash over the world?
Da da da. Yes.
I liked
Da, da, da.
the voice there really helped at the end.
Yeah, it does. Yes.
Thank
The
you.
voice of God. Yes.
So just to give it's a very general blur, but just to sort of give the idea. And then the question was about the Friends of Humanity and how did I approach them?
Yeah, and specifically in the song Forecast, using the phrase "we must secure our future," which of course echoes the 14 words, I don't know if that was deliberate. I assume it was.
It
Maybe it
was.
wasn't. It was. Okay, good. I'm just making sure. But how did you approach constructing that song and presenting in that very beginning what the moral stakes of this Friends of Humanity organization are for the story and for all of us?
Sure. The first thing that, I mean, the opening number of a musical has to accomplish so many different things, right? We have
Yes.
to introduce the audience to the world. We have to introduce the audience to the main conflict, ideally. You have to introduce them to the characters. You have to introduce them
Hmm.
to the tone, to the style. Like, what are y'all in for the next 2.5 hours? You got to do a lot of heavy lifting. So, and the opening number is usually something that you want to write later in the process when you know what your whole show is about and how it's turning out, et cetera, and how you want to build the themes. And I was kind of shocked to find that forecast was the first thing that I wrote for the show.
Really? Oh,
Yeah, it
wow.
just sort of came out. I did do extensive outlining for the show,
Yeah.
a little bit more than I usually do. So I did have a really good idea of where I was going and how I was going to get there. But the fact
Yeah.
that it was the first thing was kind of surprising. But the Friends of Humanity are, you have to, especially when I'm writing, you have to tap into what's real and what's human about a group of people in order to write them hopefully not as a caricature. Obviously, you're
Yes.
exaggerating some of these things, but if you think about, and this might be some tricky things that I'm saying here, so if I say something
We can
horrible, I will
always, yeah,
immediately take
no,
it back.
please. Riff,
But
riff.
the idea that all of these horrible things and all of this horrible hatred and fear that people have had throughout history um, exists, and it exists for a reason. It's not a good reason, but it exists for a reason. People are afraid of things,
Hmm.
and people are often afraid of things they don't understand, and people are afraid of things that disgust them, and people are afraid for all sorts of reasons. So to sort of tap into they're doing this because they're afraid is
Right.
my way into the humanity. And then that allows them to do some horrible things because we often act pretty horrible when we're afraid. And especially when we're afraid en masse, we do some
Yes.
pretty horrible things. So it was really simple to just be like, okay, these people are terrified. And you
Yeah.
have the blueprint for everything that's been written about everybody who's ever hated anyone else to pull from. And that's super easy. We must secure our future. Like, that's something that even you don't have to be full of hate to understand. We're all trying to
Yes.
secure our own future. Like there's a
Right.
reason that phrase works. There's a reason the 14 words works. There's a reason these things take hold is because they grasp onto something that everybody can
Yeah.
understand. And
Yeah.
so that's where I was coming from with the Friends of Humanity.
I would imagine the one part that you couldn't really race blind cast would be Storm, right? Like Storm is probably, I can't imagine doing a white Storm, but one thing I really liked was how race and gender blind the rest of so much of the cast of characters that we're familiar with from reading these comics. You have at the front of the book, like in parentheses, like this will be, this is a male character, this is a female character, but then you have this very specific note saying like, don't worry, you can get crazy with it. Like let people be blind in their gender casting here. And what is that? What goes into actually casting something like that? Because it's easy to say that, but like I haven't cast a show since I did my, one and only directorial stint back when we were in high school, or I was in high school. You were already graduated by that point. And that was a very specific, tiny little play. You're doing a big thing here. How do you end up actually going about casting something like an X-Men show, especially if you're trying to be gender and race blind?
Sure. I love casting. I think it's so fun. It's one of my favorite parts of the process. And specifically to talk about Storm, I think it would be pretty nuts to cast a not, African American woman as
Yeah,
Storm. And especially when it comes to gender or race blind casting, it's more of an opportunity as opposed to a requirement. And it's also something where you want
right.
to punch up. You don't want to punch down. You know what I mean? You don't
Absolutely.
like,
Yes.
especially like I would never specifically, me personally, whitewash, one of the first black superheroes and arguably the most famous black superhero in all superhero canon.
Right.
Like, but say this is done at a school that has no black people for whatever reason. Like, go
Right.
ahead. We didn't bake her African ancestry specifically into the show. There's some references to it,
Right.
um, but we wanted to try and keep it very present, kind of for that reason.
Right.
So we're honoring who the character is and
But
not
like on the
trying
other
to.
hand, Dazzler in this debut production of PRF was a young African American girl, black
Yeah,
student, and she's tremendous. And I love the idea of Black Dazzler. Like that's especially because listeners, you may not
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
Dazzler in her development was for a period of before she was debuted, but there were actual character designs drawn by John Romita, was modeled on Grace Jones and was supposed to be black for a little bit in the development of the character, but then they sort of chickened out and made her white in the end. So I'm curious, tell me about casting the student who played Dazzler, because she really was amazing in that role.
she really was. It was the first musical that she'd ever done.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not, which is really exciting. And I remember having a conversation with Michelle about whether or not we're like, this is a heavy load to give to someone who's never done a musical, but ultimately I think they knocked it out of the park. The decision
Yeah.
to make Dazzler again wasn't,
Did I use the wrong pronouns? Are they them? I shouldn't have. You
you
said they
know,
there.
they so I
I want to be
think
respectful there. I shouldn't have assumed.
no,
Yeah.
of course. And I think that they went by they and she, if I remember correctly. I could be speaking
Okay.
it wrong. So, Sakani, if
No,
I'm
that's
fucking it up,
fine.
I'm so sorry. Um,
We'll
but
stick with they. We do a lot of they on this show because of Grant Morrison, so that's
we're
fine.
always safe.
Yes, always safer with that. But wow, that's amazing. Anyway, keep going. Yes, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, no problem. And the the idea of sort of changing Dazzler's vibe has happened throughout like the course of the different X-Men comics. Like she's
Yes.
often sort of reinvented depending on what style or thing you need. So I felt a little creative license being like, okay, like I don't necessarily want if Dazzler is the most famous mutant pop star, I don't necessarily want her to be a disco queen because that's not totally relevant right now. So I wanted to sort of bring her into the more modern era and give her music like a little bit more, pop rocky like kind of vibe.
Well, that
So
brings us to the song that I wanted to talk about next, which
sure,
is one of them, which is, you have this moment where some of the X-Men go to a Dazzler concert because they're trying to recruit Dazzler back to work with them. And you get to see Dazzler perform this song, which was not what I would expect from a Dazzler, but it was everything I wanted that I didn't know I wanted. It feels much more
love it.
it's not bubbly pop, it's not disco. It is something closer. I'm trying to think. I'm not as good at describing music as I am at describing comics off the top of my head, but it's like a slightly darker tone.
Sure.
How many times have you said what you said, even though I could tell they were lies? How many times have you done what you did and then couldn't look me in the eyes? Don't try to dim my light because you can't see my eyes. You left me stranded here while your heart's on distant shores. How lost do you think I am? I'd rather be lonely than one of them.
I feel like there's a lot to be said about a lot of the arcs of different current popular pop musicians,
Yeah.
often who have this sort of like darker turn or darker album. This definitely feels like Dazzler is in her Reputation era, and I think that that's worth noting.
Yeah, how did you approach writing the song One of Them?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a pretty close thing. I knew I wanted it to be some sort of like gothic rock, like,
Nice.
dark vibes, but still up, if that makes sense. And to sort of, show the transition of her moving from dark to light as she works through her own personal stuff, and to sort of
Right.
represent that musically. So that's sort of just really where it came from. I was like, oh, I want to write this cool gothic rock song, and give her a chance to show off and introduce the character. to the
But
world.
it also sort of has this interesting thematic establishment for her because the chorus is, I'd rather be alone than be one of them. And the idea being just sort of she's starting out from this place of protecting herself by being lonely at the top. And part of that is because she just doesn't feel like a joiner, doesn't feel like she wants to be a part of a cause. And then she sort of gets recruited into the cause by her ex-boyfriend Cyclops, and they end up doing this sort of public awareness campaign to try and get humanity more on board with mutant kind, and which leads to a truly delightful song, the X Gene, the Beast's big number. And I want to know about putting that together, both writing it and the student who performed it, who is absolutely terrific at doing the Beast performance.
Just as sure as the sky is blue, 23 times 2 equates to chromosomes paired, which are similarly shared by humanity hitherto. But consider this, if you will, a sprint in the run of the mill. Evolution leapt, and we had to accept new biographies in our playbill. There's nothing more to me than you. We share the same 23 times 2, but we produce these grand effects because our DNA is divided by X. He's actually not a gene, but a novel set of nucleotide-based pairs that allows for reconfiguration in the primary structure.
Oh my God. And again, his first musical.
Are you kidding? This is great.
Right.
How many people were in this who were their first musical? Was it a lot of them?
Actually, yes. A lot of
Oh,
people came
wow.
to audition because they liked the X-Men or they thought it was a cool idea. So we had some
That's
like
great.
first timers. Oh my God, he was so charming, this kid, and his family came and they wore "We Love Beast" t-shirts. Like
Oh my
Aw,
God.
they were like
that's
so
what I
into
like
it.
to hear. That's what I like to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was blown away. But no, he was so good. And writing that song was such a delight because it's so, I love Beast, and Beast is one of my favorite characters
Yeah.
just because I love the poetic way that he talks. I love that he has a scientific mind. I love the inherent contradiction of him being this arguably grotesque looking animal, but like he's
Right.
soft natured, etc. I hate some of the things
Sure.
they've been doing with Dark Beast, but that's a whole other conversation.
We don't need to talk about that. Yeah,
Right.
Hey, listen,
well,
listen 2 episodes back for some Dark Beast talk.
yeah, we had a little bit of that, but anyway, none
That's
of that
good.
for now. But yes, your Beast while you were writing that. Yeah.
So loved him. The X Gene song was really fun. The whole idea of like doing a public awareness campaign was sort of twofold. Number one, I wondered why, or at least it hasn't been in any arc that I've written, like the X-Men are so reactive, obviously, which they sort of have to
Mm,
be. But in a musical, and frankly in any story, you want sort of your protagonists to be a little bit more active and sort of trying to drive the plot, etc., instead of just necessarily reacting to it.
right.
So doing a public awareness campaign just sort of made sense to me. I'm like, if you're hated and feared by the world, what fights hatred and fear? But information, welcoming people into your world. Like, hey, look, we're not so, we're not worth being afraid of.
Right.
So that's where the whole idea came from. As misguided as it may be, or as like, as you see in the show, it's not always that simple, but
Yeah.
um, giving them something positive and forward to do and like active. And they're like, okay, this is our plan to actually make a better world instead of trying to stop a worse one, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So
Boy, does that make sense. But yes, keep going.
yeah, that's where the X gene came from. And then structuring it the way it is with Beast going way too deep into the scientific stuff about
Yes.
how this could happen and totally missing the point that you're supposed to captivate an audience. Like going, this is where I had sort of the most fun with the musical theater vibe,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Because it is a campy musical theater number on
Well,
purpose.
look, it's Beast. If you think Beast didn't do musical theater in college, like, come on, give me a break.
Absolutely. I think he did stage crew, actually.
Oh, you think so? Okay, well, involved in theater in some way,
Yeah,
yeah.
because like he probably watched from the wings, or he was very
That's probably
interested in
true.
like
Yes.
the art of it all, but not necessarily being on stage.
Yeah,
I bet he did
Josie's
yes.
like Jekyll and Hyde.
Josie's gay beast agenda strikes again.
My gay beast agenda. Yes, we've had many discussions about the Morrison run about how I was just very disappointed as a youth and as an adult that they walked back the whole beast is gay thing. I was like, I liked that. That was fun. But no, alas. So another, the other dimension that we have the or point in the triangle that we haven't talked about is the Magneto faction, the Brotherhood. And I'm curious. Tell me about doing Too Far Is Not Far Enough, the song that sort of establishes a lot of the stakes of the Magneto storyline. How
Sure.
did you approach writing Magneto and that song?
I love Magneto. I think Magneto is one of the greatest comic book characters ever created.
Sure.
So too far is not far enough. I when I landed on that, I can't remember exactly where it came from, but it sounds so X-Men to me,
Yes.
because it's so just it's very simple language, but it's also scary and
Yes.
dangerous and sort of
Yes.
when Magneto is pressed is exactly what he would feel like. He is so often thwarted and he is so often unable to make his points. And I think what would be enough for him, and the idea of everyone telling him he
Right.
can't do that because that's too much, you can't go that far, etc. And just his natural reaction being like, well, even if I go that far, it's still not enough.
It's
Is
still not
just
enough. Right.
right.
Society's burning and broken, centuries worth of decline, barely a portion worth saving from humanity's dismal design. Comforting lies built a prison, only collapse reveals nothing appears as it is. The world ought to look like it feels. Fire ashes, rubble, debris, violent, callous, and raw. The brainwashed may claim I've gone too far, but too far is not far enough.
And that's to any fanatic, that's at the core of what they believe, that nothing is ever going to be enough for them because the world moves so slowly, which I can think we all can relate to when we're talking
Yeah,
about
no
progress for the
kidding.
things that we believe in. Too far is never far enough. So again,
Yeah.
trying to land on something that represents his state of mind that we all can kind of relate to is where you land on.
And we say his, but I don't know what pronouns the person who played Magneto uses, but this is not Sir Ian McKellen.
It is not.
No,
Pretty sure she was a she.
it was a she. Okay,
Yeah.
good. So she's terrific. I have been waiting to see, or didn't even know I'd been waiting to see a female take on Magneto that is still. It's so interesting because in the script, it's Magneto is still referred to as he, and it's just it works. It's magnificent. Tell me about casting that young actor.
Yeah, this whole story is fascinating to me too. We talked too about the pronouns in the script, and we just agreed that Magneto was going to be he, regardless if it was being played by Marin or not, even though she's a she.
Yeah,
And again, it works. You just suspend your disbelief, and so Magneto is always just a he, even though it's played by this, beautiful young woman.
yeah, yeah,
And I knew Magneto was going to be the hardest to cast because, like, especially in a high school, like, how does somebody have gravitas like
yeah.
Magneto? How is someone going to be able to hold the stage and be a villain essentially and be grounded and real and scary and imposing and all of the things that you want Magneto to be while still human? especially since I knew I kind of wanted to cast a teacher as Professor X. So like,
Right, right. Oh yeah, we have to talk about that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes.
right. So I was like, okay, they're going to have some scenes with a teacher, you know, how are we going to find this person? Because that's rare. And I was obviously open to it being a woman. And then when Marin came in and auditioned, she originally, if I'm remembering correctly, like wasn't available on the first day of auditions because she was in rehearsal for another show or she was at a concert or
Mm.
something like that. And I saw people and I was like, oh, I don't know who we're gonna do for Magneto. Maybe this person, maybe this person. And I
Yeah.
know she came in on like day 2 or day 3, and I was like, ooh, because she just had something. She had that
Yeah.
strength that you don't often see in a high schooler. And so it
No.
really just was like, it was so clear. It went from, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do to, oh, there she is, which was so nice. You didn't really have to work for it. And then she, great actress, very
Yeah.
interested in like really talking about it and learning about it and getting to the heart of it. Brilliant singer. So we were lucky to have her
Yeah.
in the show.
Yeah, I really dug that portrayal. And
And it worked.
no, it works
Like,
incredibly well.
yeah,
Unfortunately, this is an audio podcast, so I can't fully convey how great the costumes were. But I'm curious how you went about. I mean, comics are a visual medium, musical theater is a visual medium. You have to represent these characters in a cool way. And one thing I loved was none of the costumes were off the shelf, like X-Men costumes that you were familiar with. They're all instantly recognizable. Like Jubilee is so obviously Jubilee. Cyclops is obviously Cyclops, but they were not standard issue, just, oh, we took Frank Quitely's outfits or we took Jim Lee's outfits or whatever. How did the costumes get designed and how did you come up or whoever come up with that?
sure. So that was Donica Seminaro, I believe is her name. I don't have it in front of me. If I mess that up, I'm so sorry. I know it was Donica.
No, it's
And she designed the costume. She was on staff at Oak Park or contracted independent. I don't remember which, but
sure, but
she was brilliant. Loved her, loved what she did. And
me too.
she had some pretty solid freedom. I think my input was like, I think there's a couple of things that are iconic about the characters that we know we're going to want to
Sure.
have represented visually. You know, Beast has to have blue fur. You know, Jubilee should
Right.
have a yellow coat. You know, Cyclops needs
Right.
his visor. Like, let's stick to some of the, and maybe the color schemes. You know, you want Magneto kind of in like reds and purples, etc. Like,
Right, right, right.
you know, but other than that, I'm like, here's what they looked like across the run, but like, do whatever you want, really. So she just sort of came up with these sort of beautiful, like, postmodern interpretations of the things. Like, she didn't go the like black leather route in the movies. She didn't try to make it look like hyper realistic. It was almost like their street clothes, kind of in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
And like she gave different characters just like different vibes. Like Jubilee was a young hipster, and
Right.
like you know Gambit and Magneto ended up being like steampunky kind of vibes.
Yeah.
Like it just you know where Cyclops was in like you know a sleek jacket and like it was. I loved her work. I thought it really was excellent and effective.
Yes. One more song I want to talk about. My absolute favorite. The one that before I even watched the video of the musical, when I was just listening to the soundtrack and I didn't have the script, so I hadn't even gotten in touch with you yet. I just found the cast recording and was listening. I'm like, I don't even know who these characters are for a lot of these songs, but I'm loving all of this. And then I got to a song that I was like, well, this is Wolverine singing to Jean, obviously. And that was Never or Forever.
I know I'm a monster. You treat me like a man when I can't see my value. Somehow you can. You make me feel alive, and I've had lots of years. I did not know heartbreak till I saw your tears. So
one of the most beautiful love songs I've heard in a modern musical. Like
Oh,
it
thank you.
so perfectly captures the longing that Logan has for Jean in this context of like the Scott triangle. How did you I'm just curious what came into that song because it moves me very deeply. I thought it was really well done.
Riley, I'm not kidding when I say Josie has been talking to me about this song possibly
Yeah.
for 5 months
I
now.
love it. I love it.
So
It's so good.
apologies.
It's so so so
Apologies,
good.
Becca.
It's okay. No, 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 no. Listen, listen, listen. I love that she's so excited. And listen, I didn't think it was a bad song either, but like
No, no, no.
it blew
I'm just
Josie away.
down into the hyper focus. But tell me about writing that one and directing it because the performance was from the actor who played Wolverine was unbelievable.
Yeah, we that was another. I was like, where are we going to find Wolverine? Because again,
Right.
like, what are you going to do? And Rowan came in and is trans. And
Amazing.
again, it was so not it really wasn't a statement, but Rowan kind of had this beautiful vulnerability, like, but in kind of a like a hackles raised type way that like
Yes.
I think that a lot of, dare I say, queer people kind of have to have, especially
Oh
when you're
yeah.
younger.
Oh yeah.
And Lord knows that's something that I identify with, but something that I didn't even realize was kind of one to one with Wolverine. Wolverine is desperately afraid of his feelings and desperately
Yep.
wants to be seen and doesn't want to be seen at the same time, which is
Yep.
like the queerest thing I've ever heard of in my life.
100%.
Which you don't necessarily really realize, or I didn't
Right.
until this. So I was like, oh shit, this is perfect for Wolverine. I always knew that Wolverine would have, because people would ask me when I was like, I'm going to write the X-Men musical. They're like, oh my God, is Wolverine going to sing? How is that going to work?
Right.
And
Right.
I was like, well, he's going to sing a fucking love song to Jean. I'm like,
Yes.
what else? Like, of
Right.
course, like, what would be the only thing that would move him to sing? And obviously, he sings in other places, but like
Sure.
the
But this is the big spotlight
right.
moment.
So I always knew it was going to be a love song for Wolverine because that would be the
Mhm.
only thing that would move him to sing sort of in world. And the the idea of like, you're my forever girl, was like
Yeah.
sort of always in my head of like, because he's going to live forever, you know what I mean? Or
Right.
for a long time.
For a longer time than anybody else.
That
Yeah.
was sort of the initial idea of like Forever Girl was sort of the
Mm.
key into the song that I was working with. And that turned into like, I wanted to make it a confession and a declaration, but not a demand, which I
Yes.
think is
Yes.
really important. And that's sort of how I wove it into him being like, hey, this is how I feel. Do you feel the same? I hope you do. And if not, cool. Is sort of
Right. And
basically
then
what the song is saying.
right. And then the answer at the end. I mean, let me pull up the lyrics really quickly. I had it right here. Where like at the end, it's like Gene doesn't really reject, but sort of, but does in effect. I'm just gonna go now because that's what I've got to do. Never or forever, all up to you. Let me leave and we'll pretend I never said these things, or you stop me for forever and we see what tomorrow brings because I love you. I love you. And I just was like a weepy mess when we got to that, me and my spouse. And I, I don't know. I think you really captured, you and Rowan really got something that I have been harping on about Wolverine in this podcast. We might as well do the question now, Becca, but we had a running thing on this pod where we would ask every guest whether they thought Logan was hot because the Grant Morrison manifesto that they wrote for New X-Men was like, we got to make Logan attractive to the ladies and like he's got to be sexy now. So we asked everybody, do you find Logan hot? We're not going to do that here necessarily, but like because there's the whatever. But do you feel like I guess you've already answered it. There's something kind of inherently trans and queer about Logan. Like that's what I keep harping on. Is like Logan's a lesbian. Logan's a stone butch. Logan's not just a simple man, cis het man.
Josie has spent a lot of time trying to convince our guests that Logan is a lesbian. And
In some way, yeah, some variety of lesbian, in the greater expanded lesbian universe. And
The lesbian legendarium.
the lesbigerium, the
Josie, if
lesbigerium.
you ever decide to pick up roller derby, I already have a roller derby name, but that should be
You
your
do.
roller derby name is Lesbian Legendarium.
I am so into it. I'm down. I'm down. But you basically provoked you brought out what I have been seeing in Logan for so long, and I really appreciate that, you and Rowan. What did you feel like you learned over the course of putting this show together, both about the X-Men and kind of about what the larger purpose of the X-Men is? Or Becca, you're butting in.
Can
Yeah.
I just add? I just wanted to say I wanted to add real quick, as long as we were talking about that song, the Logan and Jean song,
Yeah,
that
please.
I really so Jean is a character that I've often joked is somewhat ineffable. I feel like it's a struggle for so many fans even to pin down what there is about Jean other than that Jean is hot. That is what you hear often is like, oh, she's hot, she's beautiful, she's nice, she's
She's a
good.
girl. Like, I mean, that's how she was originally conceived by Stan and Jack, as like the
One
girl.
The
Right.
one
girl,
thing
right?
one thing I really loved about your version of Jean, the version in the script that you wrote, is you have a sort of you make it clear that Jean is really bad with interpersonal stuff. And you mention that it's because of her psychic powers, but it
Yes.
almost read to me again as someone who I believe I've what word did I use to describe my level of neuroatypicalness on this? I was like maybe on whatever. I'm kind of like I'm
You're special.
self-diagnosed.
You're a
I'm
special person.
self-diagnosed as autism, and I read it as being very autistic coded the way that you've sort of written Jean Grey. There's a couple scenes where she just has no idea how to like productively interact
That's so
with someone,
interesting.
and I really responded well to that, and I thought that was such a lovely angle for Jean Grey. Maybe I'm
Thank you.
completely making no sense, but
No, you're making so much sense, and that was deliberate. First of all, I am
Oh,
also
great.
on the spectrum, so I see a lot of that. Something that really is important to me in sort of superhero lore, and something that I think doesn't get mined a lot. It does for certain characters. So, is the downside to whatever power that you have, creating an interesting
Yes.
characterization. So obviously Rogue has the most obvious one she can't touch,
Right.
but that is such a ripe place to mine interesting human interactions. And so if you think about Jean, who was arguably one of the most powerful mutants ever, blah blah blah, like what could possibly be the downside to this beautiful gorgeous girl being a Mary Sue and the most powerful mutant ever? And if you're somebody who's always in and out of everybody's head, and you know what everybody's thinking and feeling at all times, how are you possibly going to interact productively with the rest of the world? Because that
Right.
is not how the world interacts. The world does not tell you what it's thinking and feeling at any given moment. And I was like, that is such an interesting place to put Jean,
Yes.
because it gives her character something interesting to do and also gives her a reason to see something inside Logan and Wolverine that other people can't or wouldn't. And it gives him a reason to love her because she can see things that other people can't or won't. And to me,
Yeah.
that's was all deliberate and a good way to give her a deeper meaning or connection to the team and purpose and reason to be loved beyond just she's hot.
Yeah. And educational purpose. It's a great jumping off point for discussions about how to deal with people whose brains work differently. And that's,
Absolutely. And I
yeah,
think something that we
perfect.
sort of touched on earlier too, but didn't quite explore is Logan hot? Is Logan a lesbian, etc. What I love about X-Men across the board, across all the characters, across all the
Mhm.
stories, is like depending on who you are going to experience the story differently. And it is not going to be diminished if you
Yes.
can't mine that depth. Like one of my, for example, neurotypical straight brothers or whatever is going
Mhm.
to get something out of Wolverine, that is completely different than some queer neurodivergent kid.
Yes.
and that's great. And it's going to be very different from the exact same material. And I love that
Yes.
about X-Men because,
Yes.
like, if I was like, oh, Logan is so queer coded, you know what I mean? My straight brother who grew up watching the comic with me or the cartoon would be like, what the fuck are you talking about? That makes no sense.
Right.
Meanwhile, the queer community is going to be like, oh, yeah, like, of course.
Duh. Yeah.
Right. So I love that. And I think that's true about all the characters. Like,
Yeah.
duh, Jean Grey is totally autistic coded
I love that.
because who is better at reading body language and signs and what people really
Yeah.
mean
Yeah.
than autistic people? I hate when people are like, oh, they have bad communication skills. I'm like, no, you have bad communication skills.
Yes.
Like, don't, it's
Preach.
It's about that different way. And I did use the phrase earlier where I said that I felt like she was not communicating productively. And I mean like productively in the sense that in a way that other people understood what she was saying. I don't necessarily mean like I think Jean Grey sucks. I don't think that
No, no,
was
we all
ever
love Jean Grey here, but yeah.
no, and I took that for what you meant.
okay, good.
Good. Good, good, good. How did the audience receive it? The video I saw, they were really into it, but like what did audiences make of the show? Did a lot of people know the X-Men beforehand? Were there people coming in just for the X-Men, or was it mostly a school crowd? Who was seeing this and how did they react?
So it was a little bit across the board. We had
Huh.
a lot of obviously parents and family and friends. And I asked most of the audiences, before the show or at intermission or whatever, like, what is your experience with the X-Men?
Oh,
And I would say predominantly people just sort of had a passing understanding. Um,
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah,
predominantly. There were, small pockets of people who came simply because they like saw it in the Oak Leaves, and were like, oh, X-Men, why not?
right.
So there were some like X-Men fans. But for the most part, it was people who only had a passing understanding, which I loved because that's sort of one of the
Yeah.
purposes of the piece, is to introduce people to things that are out there. And people loved it. Like, even if they didn't understand, I was like, did you get the concept? Like, did you follow the
Yeah,
story?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
was it too much? Like, they were like, no, they got it. They were in, they enjoyed it. I really tried to keep it not so stuck on mythos, that it
Right,
would be too much for people, but
right.
also exciting enough to have like a dramatic conclusion and some twists and some fun X-Men-y things that could, keep it interesting. And I remember, so it was received very well. Like it was never like,
Great.
a groaning. We added a second week of performances because people wanted to
Ooh,
see it, which was really nice.
that's
And
terrific.
I remember one night, um, all of the high school kids came to see it, and like there's like some betrayals and stuff. And I love when the audience is super responsive, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
they
yeah,
were
yeah,
like
yeah.
hooting and hollering and yelling at the stage and like gasping with
Yes.
Oh, that's
surprise and
great.
stuff.
That's
And I
what you
was
want. That's what you want.
right. I was so in. I was like, oh, I like this. But for the most part, people were very respectful. But I was like, no, get me more disrespectful high school students. They were so in.
Yes, yes,
Um,
they're gonna really get the energy. Oh, that's
right.
great. What do you feel like you learned from this
Oh
process in whatever
God.
form? I mean, we can retract that question if you learned too much, but I'm curious what you can interpret that however you like, but what did you walk away from as a gift, as an addition to your life because you did this production?
The simple answer is it deepened me as an artist.
Good.
And the longer version I've already sort of talked about because it's 1,000 of those little moments that we already talked about. The idea of,
Yeah.
realizing that Wolverine is, queer coded and that people can
Yeah.
look at different things like just 1,000 of those little things, both about the character and about myself.
Sure.
So it's hard to break it down before this just deepened me, and also like the joy of working with younger people is great.
Yes.
Do it if you have a chance because they're not
Yeah.
broken by the world yet. So it was lovely.
That's really
So
great.
yeah, I learned too much to talk about it and to delineate
Sure,
individually, but
sure.
thousands of little lessons.
That's lovely.
That's really sweet. And
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. There's a lot of things about my job that I absolutely hate.
Sure.
And there's a lot of things about my job that make me want to keep going, you know?
And I'm sure a lot of the things that make you want to keep going are oriented around the students and the joy they bring and the
It's
anguish they bring.
actually the coffee in the break room.
Oh, well, there you go. That makes sense. Yeah, that makes good sense.
That's a total lie. I don't drink the coffee. I don't drink the coffee in the break room because not every sink in the school has potable water in it. But that's a
Oh,
Oh, fun.
conversation for
that's a separate convo. Yeah.
That's one of the $15 million conversations.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's an expensive one. My last question for you, Riley, is I realized why the title Mad Avenue? It doesn't get mentioned. The phrase doesn't appear that often in the show, but you give it to the title of the show, and I'm curious, what does it mean to you, Mad Avenue?
So in the show, Storm is sort of my wide angle lens,
Yeah.
was how I kept her in my brain. I'm like, she's flying over everything, etc. The idea of her being the wide angle lens. And I didn't know what the title of the show was for the longest time. I just knew it was going to be about this thing.
Right.
And when she has her song, she gets the title song in the show. And I realized that that was the title of the show because it sort of represents in the moment on stage, she has, risen above New York and she's like preparing to do Big Weather, etc.,
Hmm.
for plot reasons. And she's talking about, I love the lyric that she says there in the song about, let me find it exactly so that I know what I'm talking about.
We'll play the clip too, but I want to know what you're talking about for when you're.
Right.
wow, this clip sounds terrific.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I love the music. Just listen to it.
I haven't read this in a while. I really like this show. I'm really proud of
It's
it.
really good. I was revisiting it to get ready for this. I'd watched it months ago, and it's just, I really hope you get to do it, or somebody at least gets to do it more because there's so much to mine.
Yeah, and I'm fixing the top of Act Two. I have a much stronger thing,
Oh,
which
okay.
is nice. I mean, I like what's here, but
Yeah,
anyway, okay,
but
wait.
it's a work in progress. Yeah.
Great. So the first time she mentions it, we're clinging so hard to this man-made nonsense. We've lost our minds in the ballyhoo. We chose the wrong road. The helpless are trampled, crushed by the crowd on this mad avenue.
I'm losing them. Is this what it means to be an X-Men?
And the idea of like we as humanity have chosen all of these things because we're just caught up in the
Mm,
madness and we're just, running down the only path available to us. The idea of, and that's what the
mm.
mad avenue is like this is this crazy path that we're stuck on that we can't get off of. Because it's just like, I mean, if anyone who's ever been to New York, like these avenues, they
Yeah.
run, and they're just really, and it was
Yeah,
very
they can be very creepy. If you stand in one that's sort of slightly uphill, you can just look down one of these avenues and see on a clear day, you can see forever, as they say. And it's almost alarming. You're like, humanity shouldn't be able to build something that these caves of steel. This is an
almost
aberration, almost, but it's
right.
also awe-inspiring at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah, thank you, Josie. You're saying exactly like all of these things that I thought about too. And I don't know if anybody knows what Manhattan Henge is, but there are certain
Yes,
times of day when the sun is setting, it sets perfectly along the streets
the
of New York.
grid.
And right. And that's actually the art image for the show is Manhattan Henge because it just feels so
That's what it
strong and
is.
perfect to sort of represent what this is. But the
Amazing.
second time she says Mad Avenue is sort of like the whole purpose of the show, which futures are built by the people who care for those who are lost on the Mad Avenue. And that's sort of the
Yes.
X-Men's mission and
Yes.
true to life of like we have to consider those who are struggling for whatever reason they may be struggling, whether they're caught up, whether they're the perpetrators, whether they're the
Yeah.
victims, but all of us on this Mad Avenue that we're being, forced down. The whole purpose is you have to care for them. So that's why I was like, oh, that's what the show is.
Brilliant.
So that's where it came from.
That's a good place to top it off, I think.
Love it.
Becca, do you have anything else you want to ask Riley? I mean, I feel like we've gotten so much good stuff here, and I really Are there plans for the show to get staged anytime in the near future, or is this something that our listeners, if they have wherewithal, they can try and make happen?
I mean, yeah, honestly, I'm obviously reaching out to people and whatnot and trying to
Sure.
make it happen. But if your high school or college is interested in doing this, but reach out to me. Literally, contact me on my website, Riley Thomas Writer, if your school wants to do the show, and we'll make it happen
Great.
because it's that simple. And yeah, I'm really proud of it. I think it's really fun. The students had such a good time.
Oh, good.
Some of them wrote me really beautiful letters afterwards, talking about how it changed their
Oh.
life. I'm like, this is adorable. I still have them.
I should hope you do.
So,
Yes, good.
yeah,
That's wonderful.
such a delight to work on. So,
So RileyThomasWriter.com is the place to find you, yes?
correct.
Great. Okay. Anything else you want to plug while you have the audience of Here Comes Tomorrow?
No, I'm really bad at that. I need a
Have you, hold on,
publicist.
hold on. Have you written like any musicals?
One or
Because
two,
this would
yes.
be a part where we could plug one of them.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, something that's available to everyone. The first musical I ever wrote, I wrote when I was 19, Wild, and it got turned into a Hollywood movie. So feel free to watch Stuck the Musical, which you can find on Amazon and other places. It is starring, among others, new Oscar winner Amy Madigan and Giancarlo Esposito and Ashanti. So it's a delight.
Oh my God.
It's really
Ashanti,
exciting. So.
Ashanti, and Aunt Gladys together at last.
Yeah.
No, that's super cool. I'm not trying to make fun of you.
No, please make fun away. An absolute delight. You want to talk about something that was a learning
No, that's
experience.
super cool.
I would imagine at that age, yes, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
anyway, we,
so
we won't keep you longer. This was delightful.
it was. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us, or for having us, for being with us. Becca, I guess we can tell our listeners we will be back at some point.
Yeah, I know.
More new stuff. We're concocting what we're going to do for season two. As we have said, just to reiterate, I have finished and it is now off in production, my Beck book. So in season two, you will be hearing about that because I will be promoting it. But
Josie,
season two will happen. Yes.
Josie, just so we can mix business and pleasure here. Where can
Yes.
people go to? I know I've made that joke before, but it's fine.
I know. It's
Where
always
can
good.
people go to pre-order your book? Because they can do that now.
You can finally pre-order my book. I think this is the first episode we've had since that's been true. You can go to beckbook.com or you can go to my personal website. There's a link there too, and that's josie.zone, like the Twilight Zone. I'm also on Blue Sky at josie.zone. And Becca, where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me in a couple of places. You can find, obviously, my other podcast. I think I'm going out of order here, but that's fine. You can find my other podcast, A Prairie Dawn Companion, which is about the Muppets and 1970s feminism. You can find that on the Muppet Fan Podcasts with toughpigs.com feed. We're currently on hiatus, but there's other good podcasts on that feed. And also, it'll be back eventually. Listen, I've started doing the academic research for it. It just is the case that this podcast requires academic research. You can also find me on Blue Sky, Instagram, that kind of thing, at Tall Girl Petunia, all one word. And of course, you
Mhm.
can find this show on Blue Sky at herecomes tomorrow.net.
.net. Yes, and you can find our website there. Here comes Ron.net. All right, I think that does it. Thank you, Riley. Thank you, Becca. Thank you, listeners. And we will be back when we're back.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.